Debating, whether we notice it or not, is a big aspect of not just British culture but human nature. We debate about everything, big or small, be it political elections to decide world leaders, or comparatively insignificant things like whether or not McDonald's has better chips than Burger King. My name is Elliot Wilkes and welcome to this one-off feature about the art and philosophy of debating. Each of us has our own unique opinions, and it makes us feel good when people agree with them. Therefore, we often try to convince people our opinions are correct. This is possibly the most basic definition of a debate, but what this show will attempt to do is delve into the depths of what debating is and the many forms it takes. As well as this, I will aim to uncover what it takes to be a great debater. This is not so much a show about what we debate, more so how we debate. During my initial research, I found a blog post by Daisuke Sumatsu written in May 2013 titled "What's the Point of Philosophical Debates?" This post discusses the possibility that philosophical debates are becoming somewhat pointless as no one seems to be able to come to a shared conclusion. He goes on to explain that in this situation, reaching a conclusion relies on finding the logical flaws in each other's arguments and discussing those in order to decide whose perspective has more validity. The problem lies in that very few debates are actually resolved because neither side is willing to abandon their own opinions, even when presented with compelling evidence. To test this theory, I set up a little debate of my own. The topic was simple: which sport is the best? There were 3 participants, Rob, Matt and myself, who were selected because I know they have different opinions and knew a lot about chosen sports. Rob was arguing in favour of football, Matt in favour of gymnastics, and I was arguing for swimming.
Gymnastics is the best sport. What they put themselves through and what they can achieve, like the power they can get, but they're still in perfect control and then they execute and move straight after.
The argument for football has sort of already been said, like it's the most popular sport, it's quite a social activity, it makes the most income. It's very good for like British TV companies because they make a lot of money off football.
I suppose from my perspective, swimming could also be counted up there with the best as well. You've got the social aspect, like whenever the Olympics comes around, it's like full 2 weeks of just swimming. And it's also relatively easy to pick up, arguably a life skill. As it turns out, we were not able to come to an agreement on which of our sports was the best. However, it wasn't an unsuccessful experiment, as we were each able to understand each other's arguments and have an intelligent discussion. This then raises a new question. If a conclusion isn't met, is the debate pointless? There are a number of responses to this question, and many of them come to the same conclusion. That conclusion being, it is not our opponent we are trying to win over, it is our audience. After some thought, this theory does make a lot of sense. In the majority of scenarios where a formal debate is taking place, the winner is decided by either the audience or a governing body. Therefore, the goal of a debate is not necessarily to win over an opponent, but to win over more spectators than your opponent. A situation in which this is clearly the case is within a political debate. As it happens, my local MP is the former Education Secretary Nicky Morgan, who was kind enough to allow me to interview her about debating in British politics.
Well, I think in terms of UK politics, it's incredibly important. And, I think one of the difficulties, though, is that I think everybody thinks that when they think of an MP, they think all of them, all they spend their time in the House of Commons chamber debating. And, of course, there's lots more skills that are needed. But I do think that actually the House of Commons chamber it's a magical place actually to be. For many of us, when you first get there, you can't quite believe that you are there and expect somebody to ask you to leave at any moment because you're clearly an imposter. And the first time you make your maiden speech is quite an extraordinary thing. And I know running through my mind when I was doing it was, speaking, but also thinking, my goodness me, after years of campaigning, I'm actually here in the House of Commons. And I think that ability to win the House of Commons, so again, being a good debater, particularly for ministers when you've got a really tricky brief or a tricky issue. I've sat there before and watched as a minister or a good speaker is able to turn the House to support them, or equally, where somebody who is not a good debater has lost the House, and then that actually has a knock-on effect in the way that people are perceived by both fellow MPs, but also by, I think, the media and constituents.
So with all the recent talk of political polarisation and political debates being perceived as just politicians shouting at each other about the same 3 or so topics, has professionalism within debates taken a nosedive in the last few years? Although certain etiquette factors can change depending on the context of a debate, for the most part the basic rules are remarkably simple. In 2016, Sandy Hyde created a blog post for the Etiquette School of Ohio titled Debate Etiquette, in which he outlines all of the major societal rules to abide by during a formal debate. She makes it very clear from the outset that above all else, a good debater must handle themselves with dignity and show respect for their opponents. To this end, she includes a list of tips that she claims can be used in any debating scenario. However, for the majority of the tips on the list, they are mostly just examples of showing common decency, such as don't openly insult your opponent.
In the House of Commons, it's more formal, so there are things that we have to call each other, so we have to refer to each other as honourable members, however you feel about somebody else. If they are on your side of the House, you have to refer to them as my honourable or my right honourable friend. If they are what's called a QC, a barrister with many years of experience, it's a title, you have to call them my right honourable learned friend. So I guess there's probably more, as you said, there's more etiquette, there's more rules. Depending on the type of debate that's going on, people can intervene on you. So it's up to you as the speaker whether you give way. But again, if you don't give way very much, you're perceived not to be a confident speaker, and the House will often give you a bit of a hard time about that. So again, it's a judgment about allowing somebody to interrupt your flow of thought in your debate. So I guess it is more structured than a normal day debate with friends, but I suspect no less passionate than a debate in the pub over a Friday night drink.
It could be argued that one reason for this change is the rise of the internet, and more specifically social media. Social media, a wonderful way to reconnect with old friends and keep up to date on the lives of those you care about, also we're told. You don't have to delve very far into the internet before you discover that although social media has the potential to bring people together, it can also be used for more malicious purposes. I talked with Brian Winston, who is a professor and senior lecturer at the University of Lincoln. To this end, we also discussed the rise of social media and the impact it's had on debating as a whole, as well as raising some well-articulated arguments surrounding online anonymity and how it's harming society by helping protect people who verbally attack others online.
Well, I think that the imposition of technology in all of this has done nothing to improve situations. I think it's very difficult to be rude to people to their face. It's far easier if they're not there. And then to allow them to be anonymous is just unacceptable to me. As far as I'm concerned, I would insist on pain of law, penalty, that nothing be published that is anonymous. Nothing. I'm a professional writer and I'm an academic. Everything I say to you now, I sign. If there's something I don't want repeated, I don't sign it. If there's something I want repeated, I must sign it. And the whole business of anonymity on the net is just unacceptable in a civilized society. We will regard the Facebook, Google, open platforms of the early 21st century in exactly the same way as regard the open sewers of Elizabethan London.
It seems that sometimes a contribution from the general public can hinder or distract from a discussion, particularly when they're behind a keyboard in the sanctity of their own home. However, sometimes a debate relies on input from the general public. There are scenarios where hearing what the public thinks and allowing them to ask questions helps to get a clearer understanding of the topic in question, one such scenario being a radio phone-in debate. The concept of a phone-in debate is fairly simple. The program's host presents a topic or question and invites guest experts to discuss the various aspects of the topic in question. The discussion is then opened up to the general public, who can phone into the show with opinions, stories and questions as a way to add or argue against the topic. Patrick Thomas is part of the team that works on the Jeremy Vine show on BBC Radio 2, and I was fortunate enough to be able to discuss radio phone-ins with him.
Now, a big part of my job is talking to all the people who call into the programme who don't necessarily make it on, and it's about deciding who gets to go on the air to debate with one another, or to just recount to Jeremy Vine or whoever's presenting what their experience is. But when we're talking to people, I talk to thousands of people every week about their views on politics or on whatever's happening in the news. And you do speak to a lot of people who are very stuck in their ways. You know, when we do Brexit, I will speak to loads and loads of people who just say, leave means leave, we voted to leave, we've got to get on with it. And actually, I don't, I'm not putting them on because I don't agree with them. I'm not saying whether I agree with them or not. But if they're just literally going to repeat the phrase, leave means leave, we voted to leave, we've got to get on with it, I'm not interested in what they've got to say because they're not changing their mind. If they call in and say, I voted to remain in 2016, my opinion's changed because of X, Y, and Z, and now I think the best thing for us to do is leave with a no deal, they're saying the same thing as the leave means leave, we voted to leave, so we've got to get on with it, but they're saying it in a way that actually they could engage with the debate a bit more.
While an expert talking about a particular subject is helpful for getting lots of information, it can sometimes be difficult to see how it applies to everyday life. Having the public phone the show to give stories or ask questions is one of the ways a debate show can do just that. So why does this format work when other examples end up spiralling into online verbal assault? It's because behind every radio phone-in is someone like Patrick who is moderating who is allowed on air. One of the main points I wanted to investigate was how these shows moderate their callers. Part of the BBC's remit is providing an unbiased position, however that may prove difficult if you only get callers supporting one side of the argument. Patrick made an interesting point regarding this.
Daily we get attacked for being biased because we love Remain, or we love Leave, or we love the Conservatives, or we love Labour. We get attacked from both sides, whatever debate we're doing, saying, oh, why are you so pro this? However, I don't think you have to give 50% of the airtime on a radio debate to both sides of the argument. In many ways, I think that is more biased. If we do a story on the Jeremy Vine show that gets 99 calls saying one thing, and one call saying another thing, we're not going to bin 98 of the calls that we got. So I think that's the important thing about when you're having a phone-in debate, you need to reflect what your callers are saying.
It would seem then that the key to moderating is to understand the views of your audience, so that although both sides of the argument are discussed, the opinions of your demographic are represented. Debating then is a far more complex topic than most people expect. We've only scratched the surface with this feature, as there are far more contexts in which debates take place, each with their own slightly different rules and conventions to adhere to. While it's true that the debating is not the same as it used to be, it's also possible that it will continue to change as time goes on. For now, however, thank you for joining me on this brief exploration into debating. Also, thank you to Nikki Morgan, Patrick Thomas and Brian Winston for all your help. It was a pleasure talking to you. And of course, thank you to Rob and Matt for engaging in an enjoyable debate with me. I've been Elliot Wilkes, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.